Gig Gab, episode 458 for Monday, December 2nd, Bartender Appreciation Day 2024.
Your theme is in G.
It is. Right. Amazing. So perfect. Greetings and welcome, folks, to Gig Gab, the show by, for, and about working musicians here in Durham, New Hampshire. I'm Dave Hamilton, and you've already heard my guest co-host for today, not just speaking a bit, but also playing his guitar. A true songwriting powerhouse, 9 studio albums, I believe, packed with songs that will stay with you. Hit single Buddha Buddha, which Rolling Stone praised for its irresistible hooks. I Loved Everything, a track that climbed to their exclusive download chart. And that's just scratching the surface. His collaborations include artists like E from Eels, Foreigner's Mick Jones, Robert Lamb of Chicago. He also joined ELO Part 2, now the Orchestra, and has toured the globe delivering those iconic ELO songs. It's true. Yep. Please welcome Parthenon Huxley to the show. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you for having me, Dave. And you read the bio. That's awesome.
I of course I read your bio. I mean, why wouldn't I?
It's all true too. You got it right. That's great.
Amazing. Well, that's even better. I like. I had, who was it, Gary Burr on a couple of weeks ago, and I got something. I presumed that he had played in Ringo Starr's all-star band, but he did not. He tours with like the recording band of Ringo, but so it's a thing. I don't always get it right, and that's okay. It often leads to good conversation when I get it wrong.
I saw Ringo's band back at the Greek Theater. It was John Entwistle on bass.
Yeah.
Felix Cavalieri on keyboards.
Oh.
Billy Preston on keyboards.
What?
I mean, it was incredible.
That's all stars, man. Yeah.
That was really good.
Wow.
And I just heard a song by Ringo yesterday. It's from his new album.
Yep.
And, it's like you're listening to the Beatles channel on XM and, a Ringo song comes and we'll come back in 3 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this was a good song. It was called I've Got Time on My Hands, I think. And it's a nice little country kind of song.
I am not certain, but I am certain that Gary Burr would have co-written that with Ringo. Yeah.
Well, make that claim and have Gary call you.
There you go. Perfect. Exactly. I'll just get it wrong. It's totally fine. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, folks, if you didn't listen to that show with Gary, he's just one of those people that so many twists and turns in his career and so many fantastic things that he's done. But
back to me.
Back to you. I have an important question that I intentionally didn't ask ahead of recording, which I usually do. Your name is Parthenon Huxley. That's a chosen name for you. I want to hear the story about why you chose the name. More importantly, though, or more pressing, shall I call you Hux? That's how you've been signing your emails? Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure
When I joined ELO Part 2, Bev Bevan said, after he asked me to be in the band and we were at a restaurant and I said yes and all this stuff, he goes, by the way, there's no possible way we can call you Parthenon. And I said, well, I understand that. And he goes, so from now on, you're Hux.
Okay. All right.
I joined the band and I got a cool nickname at the same time. So
at the same time, not a terrible thing.
Yeah. So I lived in Greece when I was a kid, and I was a fan of Aldous Huxley, not Brave New World, but a book called Island.
Okay.
And, I was nearing the end of my 20s, and I said, I'm kind of bored with my normal name. And as a musician, we have the privilege of naming ourselves if we so want.
Yeah.
I messed around with Parthenon Jones and Parthenon whatever, and I just came up with Parthenon Huxley. And I said, well, that is a meaningful and ridiculous name, and I'll go with that. And I moved to New York City from Chapel Hill on my 30th birthday. And I said, from now on, I'm just going to introduce myself as Parthenon, as weird as that might be.
Yeah.
And I wasn't being super clever about it. I just liked the name. I thought it was absurd and fun sounding. And but it's worked out really well because I'm the only one. you know, and
I would imagine you are the only one. Yes.
Everybody who meets Parthenon says, "Oh, I met Parthenon."
Yeah.
So it's worked out 100 times better than I hadn't even thought about it in those terms, in terms of, you know, people remembering my name.
Yeah. Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. I am careful with using the word unique in today's world, because it winds up being used for things that don't mean what unique means. But I would venture to say you might actually have a unique name.
I might, and just don't say very unique, because you can't modify unique. It's unique.
I already love you. I want to say this every day, but I keep myself from saying it to maybe only once a week. But yes, unique requires no modifiers. It is a binary term. Something either is or is not.
Don't say most unique. You don't need it. It's unique. It's one.
It's one. It's one. And the same with priority. There's no priorities. The origin of the word is it's the top.
One thing.
It is the priority. You can't have multiple priorities. I know our language has evolved to accept that multiple, unlike unique, priorities can be correctly used when talking about multiples. But the origin of the word
I've never heard that one before. That's interesting.
It's one. I like to think of it that way because it's how I actually get stuff done. I pick a priority at a time. So I don't know.
We're all learning something here. That's wonderful.
Yeah. But back to you.
Exactly.
I at this point, I don't even know where you thought where to start. But okay, well, you've had, as I mentioned in the intro, you've had a ton of roles in your career. You've led your own bands. You've been a solo artist. You've been part of bands that probably were at some version Democratic or ish. You've been a sideman. And then you've had your role in the Orchestra ELO Part 2, which is not really a sideman, but also not a founding member of the thing. And so all of these gigs, how do you approach when it's time to go? Let's talk about when it's time to go on stage. Do you approach that differently when it's your band versus ELO Part 2 or any of that, or are you just Hux when you're on stage?
Oh yeah, that's the ELO Part 2. We're not called the Orchestra, starring ELO former members. You know, both bands aren't very good, but the band is really good, and even with the replacement parts we've added over the years, and I was a replacement part for a guy back in 1998 when I joined. But no, when we're playing with the orchestra, I'm not nervous because there's 6 other guys on stage. And so if something breaks down, there's a good chance it's not my fault. And not that anything ever breaks down, but we are a really good band. And there's a lot of noise on stage, a lot of singing.
Yeah.
You know, we got keyboards, we got strings, I'm the guitar player. Sometimes we have 2 guitars.
Sure.
It's more of a really group effort. And I walk out there confidently that we're going to kick ass, because we've had out of 500 shows, maybe one bad show that I can remember. And that was a technical problem and not us.
Sure.
I'm just surrounded by outstanding musicians, and it's like a safety valve or something. Now, when it's my band playing here in Maryland, and I've got a bass player, keyboard player, and drummer, and I'm the star.
Sure. You're the focal point. Yeah.
And it's like, you know, worrying about my voice and worrying about the words and blah, 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 blah. Once I get on stage, I'm fine. It's just butterfly.
Okay.
But
that's a good, I mean, I think some level of nerves, anxiety, although not at a crippling level, but that for me always tells me I care about what I'm about to do.
Well, you should be excited to go on stage, and you've got a couple thousand people out there looking at you. So you might as well put on a show, because, you know, that's what you're there for.
That's why they're there. Yeah.
When it comes to all these different roles I played, when I was a high school kid lying in bed with headphones on listening to Led Zeppelin, I was the guy in the middle who wrote the songs, sang the songs, played the solos. You know, I was everybody.
Got it.
And that was sort of what I pictured, was me in the middle and a great band around me. And that was always the dream. And I've had that band several times in my career, but I had to fight through some democracy bands. Like, I was in a band where everybody gets to write their songs, and it's like, okay, here's the new song by the drummer or the bass player or the whatever. And it's like, all right, it better be good,
Yeah.
And eventually I got tired of that in my 20s, and I formed a benign dictatorship where I was the writer, and the other guys were more than happy to just play what I asked them to play, and then put their mojo on it, and that's my.
I was going to say, was there still collaboration, even though the songs came from you? Sure.
You don't. They're not trained monkeys. You hire talented musicians, and you say, "Here's how the song goes. Now do your thing." And if there's something that they're doing that I find upsetting or annoying, it's like, try something else here. I'd rather this go to the ride cymbal, or I'd rather this go to the hi-hats, or whatever. Just
sure.
But,
yeah.
But I've learned over the years that you get the great musicians, and then you show them the songs, and they're going to bring more to it than you even would have expected. That's where I'm at now. And it's one of the glories of being older. We all know what we're doing.
Yes.
And we go into the studio. There's no demos. There's no nothing. It's like, here's how it goes. And then they'll put their stuff on it. And that's a really nice place to be. But when I wasn't in that position as the band leader guy, which I was when I was signed to Columbia, and I was when I was in Black Olive Records in the 90s with Pete Hux, and then I have my own band now. For various reasons, like when I was signed to MCA Publishing, after my record at Columbia failed, they said, we need you to make some money for us. So,
well, that's fair. Yeah,
that's when I co-wrote with E and Foreigner and all these other bands, Dave Wakeling and Robert Lamb and stuff. And then I became like a co-writer guy. And then when I toured with E, I was a sideman, and
right.
And then when I'm suddenly asked to be in a classic rock band, I'm a replacement part for Jeff Lynne,
Right.
So
right.
It zigzagged a lot, and which is actually the subtitle of my memoir that I just finished writing, is my zigzag life and the iconic band that changed everything. But my career's been a and then I went over to production music to do film and TV music. I've done a lot of different things.
Interesting.
It wasn't always just being in a band, and
right.
So it is what it is, and it was what it was, and I think it's actually been more interesting than I thought. The responsibility is not always all on me, and I like supporting other musicians, and I get to work with people who are just as good songwriters as I am. And so it's been a really kind of fun, interesting career. It hasn't been this monolithic,
right.
We started REM in high school and we went till we broke up, or U2, they're just, they're doing that basic one thing for which,
Oh yeah. Hey, more power
I'll take
to
your
them.
Career any day.
All day long, man.
Yeah. So I admire bands like that. I love bands like that
sure.
that last throughout the years and stick together. There's not many of them.
Well, that's the thing, is that is a dream, and it is certainly publicly realized in a way that makes it seem like it might be a thing we could all do. But there are plenty of stories, more like the vast majority of stories are you start down that path and then you realize, well, circumstances didn't allow for this to become the one monolithic thing, but also you might not, or I might not. You realize for yourself, wait a minute, I want to do different things. You're saying, you've said yes to a lot of opportunities that have allowed your career to really go wide. And
I think saying yes, when you say that, that's one of my little cardinal rules. And I lecture at a recording school here, and I say saying yes is one of the key things you'll ever do in your life. It's because, for these guys who are studying to be engineers, it's like this kid comes up and says, "Hey, can you do sound for our band on Tuesday at this little shitty club?" And you say yes. You go down there, and it turns out that they have a friend who's going to sing one song who has the best voice you've ever heard. And, saying yes opens multiple doors behind it. And that's happened to me time after time. And also because this business is a personal business, like it's always who's in the room is how far my search goes for my next partner, right? It's like, hey,
right.
you know how to shake a tambourine? Get it, it's like,
yeah, get in front of a microphone. Let's go.
That's my search for percussion.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or search for a guitar player. Oh, the guy next door plays guitar. And it's like, well, that's how shit happens. If you're in the room or close, the opportunities fall in your lap, and you're in the right place. You have to be in the right place, like studio or a rehearsal room or a club or whatever it is.
Yep.
But I just encourage people to who are trying to make it in this business to, be in the room, be at the table,
That's great advice. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I would add to that, once you get yourself in the room, you've got to be able to play but that's, to me, that's table stakes. You got to be a good hang, because if you're an asshole, it's not going to work out.
Exactly. Don't, one of the other cardinal rules is don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Right. Show up on time, be the most fun guy in the room, be super talented. I mean, if you haven't got it in the first place, what are you trying to do? You'll be outed immediately.
Right away. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're talented and surprise people, that's when the excitement starts. It's like, oh my God, those are great lyrics, or oh my God, your voice is awesome, or
Right. How did you do that? I didn't know you could do. Yeah, I love it when I hear I didn't know you could do that. It's like awesome, great. My stock just went up.
Right.
Yep. Doesn't happen as often as I would like, obviously, but it's good when it does.
That's exactly what my mom said to me when she saw me play acoustic guitar and sing at a school auditorium, school assembly.
Yeah.
And after, she said, I didn't know you could do that. She'd been hearing my, we had drums and guitars and bass. We had all that stuff in the house all the time. She'd been hearing a racket for her entire life that I played. But when I finally played soft in front of her, she couldn't believe it. I didn't know you could do that. So it's a good moment with me and my mom.
That's an awesome moment. That's great. That's awesome. You've collaborated with some amazing, well-known songwriters and also some amazing, not so well-known songwriters. But you started out finding that you didn't want to collaborate when the bass player or the drummer brought in a song. So how did that transition happen for you? Because I ask this because we all sort of have early in our lives, our musical lives, we have some great experiences, and then we have the ones and we say, okay, I'm never going to repeat that again.
Yeah.
So, but certainly as I've aged, I've realized, well, wait, I can repeat that again with a different person and it might work out differently. So How was that transition for you?
Do you mean transitioning to co-writing again?
Yeah, transitioning to co-writing. Yeah. After swearing it off. Yeah.
It was kind of I got signed to MCA Music Publishing first before a record deal, and they signed me as an artist. So my job was to write more of my songs. They were paying me to do what I did anyway. It was kind of the peak of my life.
That's amazing. Yeah. And, don't stop what you're doing. Just cash these checks.
Just pay me. Why don't you guys just pay me for being me?
That's it. So, that's the goal right there.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then and they would leave us alone in the basement out at Universal City and say, look, we're the Suits. We're going to stay on the 4th floor. You guys just make your magic. And we had like 8-hour shifts and staff engineers. I mean, and a 16-track 2-inch. It was perfect.
Oh, it's nice.
And they said, just make your magic. And when you got a mix, bring it upstairs and let us hear it. So it was a really nice, what they were trying to do was just kind of recreate the brill building feel of knocking out songs,
Yeah.
Now I've always just taken the best ideas that I hear in my head and make a song out of it. And I get excited about it. And I don't think I've ever known what a hit is, but I do know what a good song is. And I've been good at that for a long time. So I made a record. Well, first of all, MCA helped me get signed to Columbia. And I made a record with Columbia that I thought it was an album filled with good songs. It was called Sunny Nights. And it was a lifelong dream to get signed to Columbia, obviously, with a red label. And I got just in under where they were still making vinyl, thank God.
Cool.
I probably have one around here somewhere. But anyway, And that lasted about 6 weeks. You know, they threw the first single out and it didn't hit. I mean, it got a lot of great press. Press will never pay your rent. And
That's
it did okay, but not well enough, you know. And the Columbia rep came down to a station in North Carolina where the people there knew who I was and liked my record. And they said, "What's the second single off the Parthenon Huxley record?" And they said, "Play whatever you want. What we really want you to focus on this week is Billy Joel live in Russia."
Well,
so,
you know,
the album that captured all our hearts.
It's true. Oh yeah.
So,
and captured your good press too.
Jesus Christ. So my record was finished pretty quickly. I still have people who write me about it who say it's their favorite record ever and that kind of thing. So that's nice.
That's cool. Remind me, which record was this?
Sunny Nights.
Sunny Nights, right. Okay, got it. Yeah.
And so then MCA, I made a record with MCA that didn't do much. And then they said, "Look, you know, we're into you for this amount of money. We need to make some of it back. Have you ever co-written?" And I said, "Sure, yeah, I've co-written." I really hadn't, but they set me up with several different writers, and one of them was E. And so we made A Man Called E, which I co-produced and had a great time with. We ended up going on tour with Tori Amos and got on the alternative charts, and you know, it was a success, basically.
That's all. Yeah. Okay.
So not a massive hit, but like I've been on every chart but the Billboard Hot 100.
Okay. That's really, but you know, that's an interesting, I mean, it's a great soundbite, but that's a really interesting place to be. I remember seeing an interview, it was live actually. It was at South by Southwest, and it was Rick Nielsen and Robin Zander and whoever was interviewing them. And the interviewer was great, but I just don't remember their name off the top of my head. And they asked something about Rick, like, you know, think about your career. And he says, you know, it's great. He says, because when you look at somebody's record collection, we're like the fourth album back. He's like, we're never the first one. He's like, but we're also never past like 7 or 8. He's like, we're right there. And he's like, it's amazing because it means we're going to sell a lot of records, but we have the freedom to do it our way. We don't have to like please these diehard fans. And obviously there are diehard Cheap Trick fans, of course, where it's their favorite band. But his point about being, you know, the freedom of being third or fourth, what you said about it, you made every chart except the Billboard Top 100. There's some freedom in that for your career. You're not beholden to this standard of
My failure has given me tons of freedom.
Yeah.
No,
but that's not failure. Like, well, it is.
That if the first single off Sunny Nights was this kind of an elaborate, almost tone poem called "Chance to Be Loved," it was this big kind of Brian Wilson almost concoction. It wasn't just a straight rock song. That was going to be the second single. And and I've said to myself, you know, if that had been a hit, I'd be playing it for the next 40 years. And, you know, it's not exactly a song I want to play for the rest of my life. Now, I know it's just sort of a sweet side of sour grapes, but I do have a lot of freedom, and I've been able to make every record I've made since then. I completely stand behind. From start to finish, every single second is approved by me. And I've made some really, really good records. And my catalog is something I'm super, super proud of. I never had the pressure of a label again. I mean, I've been signed to multiple places after Columbia, but it was always on my terms, and for better or worse, you know.
I would say for better and worse, right? I mean, it's like you get both sides. You get to experience both sides of it, right? And then with the orchestra, I imagine that with the orchestra, those are the larger crowds that you play for versus if you're out touring your solo stuff. So you get to have some version of that experience without being beholden to it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, being a replacement part in a classic rock band makes you ask all sorts of questions. And at the same time, you can ignore all like, is this legit? Is ELO Part 2 a real, without Jeff Lynne, is it really ELO Part 2? Well, there were 4 guys from ELO in the band. So
Right.
I'm playing with guys who played on the records. And when I wrote songs for the album we did called No Rewind, I had the musicians from ELO playing my songs. This is a pretty fun place to be. And I remember my first tour, they said, Bev said, we'd like you to learn 38 songs and we'll see you in Uruguay. And so I'm on first class flying on, Chilean Airways, going to South America, which I'd never gone to before, to play, and to thousands of people and be on national TV in Argentina. And, it was just like this crazy new uptick in my touring style. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
And I did a really serious job of learning the songs so I could inhabit them and play them right. And our band, I learned so much from the band because they would just deliver the songs with authority. And that was all we needed to do. There was no hijinks, no like showing off. I mean, we had our little moves that we would
do. You have your moments, sure.
Just natural sort of things that grew out of the show. And it's like, man, when you've got a catalog of hits, because Jeff wrote incredible songs, his catalog is absurd. When you have hits and you play them with such force and with 3 singers, I mean, most bands struggle to find one singer. We had 3 really good singers, including myself. And the band is just, it was like, holy shit. I had never, the first time I played live with, I just rehearsed with them, and
sure.
And stuff.
Rehearsal is there's a different energy.
when I experienced that first show, I was going, and there's a row of photographers shooting us and the people are standing up and it's like, whoa, we're a good band, Jesus.
Yeah.
So, and it's been great ever since, even with more parts being replaced. Bev retired. Kelly passed away. Unfortunately, Lou Clark passed away. We have his son in, and then we got a new bass player, Glenn Burtnick. It's been a long chain of stuff, but the band, it's like I compare it to like a Bentley. It was originally an English car, but it's got all American replacement parts, and
yeah.
Except for we've got 2 Englishmen left in the band, and and that's just 50 years of working. You're gonna people are gonna leave or people are gonna pass away, unfortunately, at this point. And but the band is amazing, and it's always been. I have to say I landed in the right band because it's like my friend Rusty Anderson, who's Paul McCartney's guitar player.
Yeah.
It's a catalog I've never grown tired of. I played these songs 1,000 times. They're great songs. I just don't get tired of them. Mr. Blue Sky, it's exciting every single time we play it. Showdown. I mean, there's no long jams. It's like, all right, ELO jam. It's like, there's no like, okay, we're going to give the guitar player something. There's none of that. It's like relentless hits.
You're playing songs, right?
It's just songs. I have 2 solos in the entire show.
That's awesome.
Which I'm complaining about, but it's
sure, obviously. Well, as a guitar player, you should be. Right.
It's the nature of the tunes. It's like, there's no guitar solo. There's hardly any guitar solos. Hardly any bass solos. I mean, no, I should say I have 2 guitar solos that I get to make stuff up in.
Got it.
I'm not going to make anything up on Mr. Blue Sky. I'm going to do that solo as it is because it's
as more as a lead than a solo, right? Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a part. I mean, it's
a melody.
That solo is perfect. Just like with Rusty and Paul's band.
Yeah.
On Drive My Car, you kind of got to do that slide solo.
It's part of the song.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. I had Brian Ray on the show a couple of months ago.
Okay.
And,
sure.
And he was saying the same thing. I mean, and with a lot of happiness about this. Like this was not complaints. It was, I get to play these songs for audiences who want to hear them. And so you play them the way they want to hear them. And Paul's right there. I mean, it's like, what a gig.
Now, the first time I saw Rusty and Paul doing the back-to-back thing, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's in Madison Square Garden, like 8th row. It was insane. Like,
that's awesome.
But he's nobody deserves it more than Rusty. And he was in my band after I moved out to LA and during the Columbia period and stuff. And we've been close ever since. And when he got called by David Kahn, who produced my Sunday Nights, to David has hired Rusty for the last 30 years. So when he got the Paul gig, it was just like, well, why would I hire anybody else? He said, I think you're going to like this next one, Rusty. And they finished recording Driving Rain.
Yeah.
And Paul, they're packing stuff up, and Paul goes, well, I suppose we should take this on the road. And Rusty and Brian went, no, it wasn't, Brian wasn't there. It was Rusty and Abe Laboriel, the junior.
Abe. Yeah. Right.
They went, did he just say we're going on the road? Wow. And that was what, 25 years ago, 24 years ago?
That was a long time. I mean, he's been in that band for what, triple the length that he was in the Beatles?
Rusty has been with Paul for a quarter of Paul's life.
Yeah.
How insane is that?
Yeah. That's a good gig, man.
Pretty good gig. Pretty good gig.
You mentioned, you mentioned Glenn Burtnick, and he's somebody that I was introduced to his music by his then manager, who was also Jan Hammer's manager, a guy named Elliot Sears. And the first song I ever knew of from Glenn was his tune, Kiss Your Ass Goodbye, which was a great power pop tune. Mm-hmm. And I think as Elliot put it to me, he's like, yeah, and if Glenn was 25 years younger, this song would be a hit.
Welcome to my career.
Right. But he, and I'll have Glenn on the show because I think he'd be a great person to have. But just to give some context, he was, I think his first one of his first steps up was Beatlemania playing left-handed bass as Paul McCartney.
Yeah, with Marshall Crenshaw on the band too.
With Marshall Crenshaw, right? Yeah, exactly. And he's also a great singer. So let's talk about singing.
Yeah,
and
please.
Because you are a great singer as well, and as you said, you've got 3 amazing singers in the orchestra and in your other bands. I'm assuming you also have harmonies and that stuff, because it seems like that you're one. Okay, so. And I'm seeing you, for those of you who are not watching the YouTube video, Hux is nodding. So this is a great opportunity. I want to, let me guide the conversation if I can, because we're all working musicians out there. A lot of us listening here are harmony singers or singing harmonies with other singers. Any advice? How do you approach when you've got a new singer that you're going to be blending with? How do you approach that? What's your sort of formula? Do you just grip it and rip it and see what happens and then tweak it afterwards? What's your approach to singing harmonies?
Good question. Well, in the orchestra, it's they knew I was a singer. They heard that because when I auditioned, after Eric asked me to send him some music, I sent him it was pre-internet, so I sent him like 3 CDs, and they could hear that I could sing.
Right.
So when we got together to sing, it was Eric Troyer who, before he joined the orchestra, had a career as a session singer. So he sang on John Lennon's Woman. He sang on Billy Joel's Uptown Girl. Celine Dion, whatever the giant song was, sang with Bonnie Tyler, He was on a million records. Like every time we're driving around and there's a classic rock station, I think I sang on that,
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So Eric's a pro. And then Kelly Grocott, was the only other guy who ever sang in ELO with Jeff. And Kelly's got this kind of trumpet sound. So he had the hard mid-range, and then Eric had the ethereal high. And then I was sort of in there between everybody, and sort of it acted like a glue. And the first time we sang together, it was like, oh, that's good. That'll really work. It just, the paste tasted good.
Yes.
And then we now have a guy named Cliff Hillis, who's also a very, very good musician and has made a bunch of nice records. He was subbing for Glenn because Glenn's very busy, and Cliff would come in and play bass if on the rare occasions we couldn't make it work with Glenn. And then after a while, we just said, well, Cliff, why don't you come even when Glenn's here? And you can play a second acoustic, you can play like an acoustic guitar and add a 4th voice. So now we have 4 singers. So when you hear Can't Get It Out of My Head, the chorus to that, or any of these songs, Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why. When you hear all that stuff, it's impeccable. And Cliff's a really good. So I'm in a band with 4 good singers. I mean, it's an abundance of riches. It's crazy. And in my local band, I've got a drummer named Ricky Wise and a bass player named Dave Fennessy. I like to say I'm the third best singer in my own band because they're both tremendous singers. I mean, and
that's great.
We just there's nothing better than great harmony singing, and it just works, and it's worked since the beginning. Now I ended up kind of joining those guys there was like an open mic night here in town in Maryland, and that's where I first met them, and we just started playing together for fun, and it sounded great from the beginning. It was like, oh, these guys can really sing, and
yeah.
So that's kind of how it happens, more than struggling to make something work. It either works or it doesn't,
My experience matches yours, because sometimes it's square pegs and round holes, and it's not any one person's fault. It's just this is the wrong blend. Yeah, I mean, talent definitely helps smooth out some of those rough edges, because you learn. When I'm with this person, I got to sing, 10 cents sharp because they're always sharp anyway. So I might as well, if you can't beat them, join them.
No.
Right.
We won't do that. No compensating.
I, as a harmony singer, I have learned something like in the middle of a gig, if I know this guy's singing 10 cents sharp, I'm just going to sing with him because that's what sounds better.
And then you got to think about maybe
then you have a conversation. Yeah, well, that's right. There's a conversation afterwards. But if I'm, if the lineup of the band is not up to me,
right?
I will adapt. But you're right. It's better when everybody just hears it and right. Do you spend in your own band and or in the orchestra? Do you spend a lot of time sort of dissecting and saying, okay, this is the part you're going to sing, this is the part I'm going to sing, or do you sing and sing what you hear and adjust only when necessary?
Oh no, we're assigned parts. Okay. And that goes back to when I first joined the band, and Kelly. Kelly was in the band since 1973, and he was the other singer. So he was kind of the boss of harmony,
the music director of harmony. Yeah.
Yeah. And we would work things around so that we didn't want any one singer to be ghettoized up in the high range so that they'd be suffering all night. We would move things around a little bit. Like sometimes I could jump up or Eric could jump up and Kelly could take a break in the middle. And we try to make it reasonable, but we're singing as close to the records as we possibly could. And sometimes there's parts in a record that we'd say, well, we'll skip over that one because this sounds just as good and it's a little easier or whatever like that.
Well, it matches the singers you currently have, and I think that's an important thing too.
We actually sing more than what's on the records, which is a really nice thing. Like we'll take turns doing verses. If there's 3 verses, Glenn will sing a verse, Eric will sing a verse, and I'll sing a verse, and so it's a really fun band to sing in. And what's hilarious is that out of context, if I'm sitting here, if I tried to tell you my Mr. Blue Sky parts right now, I probably couldn't do it. But as soon as I'm with those guys and we're playing and singing, it's like, oh, there it is.
I know where to be.
Mr. Blue Sky, so long we go wrong. It's like the parts are all cut up in sometimes in odd ways. We have to do some jumping around.
You're crisscrossing each other. Yeah.
But we rehearsed the shit out of that stuff. And especially when I first joined the band, I had to learn all those songs the way they were doing them, and
right. You were stepping into a role essentially.
Stepping into an established harmonic structure. And same with Glenn. Like Glenn had to learn all Kelly stuff. And then if that wasn't possible, I would take some of Kelly's stuff and Eric might take some of it and Glenn would jump around to other parts, so
things that suited his range better. Yeah.
So we had to work it out, but there's nothing left to chance. I mean, we
got it.
There is something left to clams.
Well, that's live music. Yeah.
In terms of parts, we know exactly what we're doing and we do it every time. And if we find out that if it occurs to us that something's not working, or we hear the record again, we say, you know what, we've been doing that part wrong for 12 years, we'll find something that we can tweak,
Sure.
And it's super fun, man. I mean, singing harmony with those in both of my bands it's probably the healthiest thing I do,
It is a healthy thing. Yeah. There's a whole other flow state that happens when those harmonies are locked in. Yeah. When you're learning assigned parts, Are you someone who learns best like hearing them on a guitar or piano, or do you learn best by hearing someone sing them to you?
Sing them.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
I
hang with a lot of theater people, and they love to give you piano parts of your harmonies, and it's like, dude, my brain, I'm missing that bridge in my brain.
I don't. I've never done that. Don't like it, and
it's awful.
It's like sing the part, because I can
sing me the part, and then I'll mimic that. Yeah. I did a Bowie Queen tribute show last weekend, and was assigned some parts last minute too, which is always fun. And he's like, I made a recording for you, and he's like, it's on the Google Drive. I'm like, okay, great. And so like, at a break in rehearsal, I'm playing this thing. And I'm like, well, where's the part? I'm like, oh, it's the piano line you're playing? Dude, my brain doesn't work. Sing me this stupid thing. And he's saying it to me. I'm like, okay, I got it. Great. Yeah. I'm a rock and roll guy. I'm not a theater guy, man.
It's not a voice. I wouldn't like that either. But
no, it sucks.
But sing it to me. And unless it's super weird, I'll get it, after a time or two,
Yeah, right. And if it's super weird, then I just need more time with it. But yeah, otherwise it's like, okay, yeah, I got it. Yeah. I know the song. Okay, now I know this part. Right. I always find if I'm learning harmonies for a new song, I find that if I learn the lead vocal of those parts first, the harmonies all sort of fall into place for me.
Yeah, it can act as an anchor, and you can find out, and it tells you if you're singing the third or the fifth or the weird second or whatever, and that's a nice thing to know. It's like, okay, I've got the third, so in your mind you can make that quick jump up to.
You can make the jump yes, exactly. Yeah,
it's not just you can floating there in isolation. Now, I don't know how George Harrison sang that shit all those years. Dude, he always got stuck with the worst part.
I have been in bands, as I'm sure you have, and gotten stuck with singing the Harrison part. And first of all, it's like tearing your hair out trying to hear it in there. And even once I know it, then it's like, who came up with this? I'm guessing it was Harrison's brain, because
it might have been assigned by Paul or John. It might have been assigned by George, or it might have been George. It might have been George saying, "Look, I think I found something that works."
I hear this. Yeah,
but yeah, it is really hard to hear his, because the melodies are always so iconic. The harmonies, obviously, Paul, if it's John singing it.
If it's John singing,
George, like in Yes It Is, or This Boy, or
Tell Me Why. Trying to hear
oh, I have the George part and Tell Me Why.
Same.
Let's see. So
yeah.
Tell me why you cry. And why you lied to me. I get the boring, like 2-note part.
Yeah, but that's really hard to sing.
If I was going, tell me why. If I was there all song, it'd be like, I'll take a little break on the chorus.
I'll take a break. Yeah. It's true.
I'm doing that bit, So.
Yep.
Yeah. When I found out what that part was, I said, "Oh, okay, I can do that."
Okay, yep. But it's one of those you just have to burn into your head, because it doesn't. I mean, it does fit. It fits brilliantly,
right,
but it doesn't. It doesn't fit. Like, I don't see it. It's in the sandwich.
It's not part of your memory DNA of the song,
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, the melody is always first, so.
It's always first. Yeah. And Lennon even had some weird harmonies in the, how could I dance with another? Oh, like that. Like, how did you come up with this?
I just heard Across the Universe yesterday, and I just noticed that the background parts were going, instead of, it doesn't, it's not a straight cascade. He goes up after,
really?
Probably just to make it fit.
Yeah.
But it was like, because I started singing along and I made a mistake with it. And I said, there must be and then I listened to it. And said,
what happened here? Oh, anyway. Interesting. Huh. Because I got a Beatles tribute coming up at the end of the month, and we're doing some versions from Across the Universe. So I need to re-listen to that stuff. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. And it's, when you learn something, that's when you find out exactly what's there. And it's like, oh man, I never noticed that. Like,
No.
I teach guitar here in my office, and it's taught me so much because I have to figure out what it is. It's like, oh my God, listen to this, like Mustang Sally.
Oh, dude.
Nobody knows.
We have all butchered that song.
Nobody plays it right. I swear
especially the guitar part. Especially the guitar part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's.
Yes.
It's not a big C7 chord. It's this weird little. Nobody does that. I never did that in a million years. And Mustang Sally was in everybody's set coming up, and as an emergency song that we could play.
Yeah. Oh, wait, the dance floor is empty. I know.
Mustang Sally.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. It's awesome. It's awesome. I love to talk about in-ear monitors. Do you guys use in-ears on stage, or are you using wedges? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got indoctrinated when I joined the orchestra, and I had these special ones put into my ears, and we rehearsed for a week in England, and then I got tinnitus after that.
You had them too loud?
It was a week straight, probably 8 hours a day, and probably too loud. Yeah, because I was enjoying it.
Yeah.
And that's when I got tinnitus. I was really pissed. I joined this great new band, and I got ringing in my ears. But who knows if it was the in-ears? It probably was just a little abusive, but now I don't. Now I turn them. The volume's so far down. All I want is a hint of what's going on in terms of the other singers and my guitar. So
is that it? Do you just have like vocals and guitar in your ears these days? Okay.
I'm in front of the drummer. I hear plenty of that. The bass rumbles throughout the stage and the room, so I hear plenty of that. I do have Eric's keyboard. I have my guitar and Eric's keyboard because it's in tune.
Yep.
And I have all the singers so we can sing. And that's about it. And Mick Kaminsky on violin, he's got violin and he's got orchestral keyboards and cello with Louis Clark Jr. And he has no singers in his. So it's like, I don't know. So if I ever get mix by accident, it's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
I got 400 dBs of violin and nothing else.
And nothing else. Are there side fills or anything on stage, or are there amps on stage? Do you have a quiet stage other than drums?
Yeah, amps. My speakers are pointed backwards, so I can see the head. The head's forward. I can adjust it, but the speakers are backwards. So we got it mic'd, because nowadays the PA does all the work. I mean, everything's coming through the PA. So I'm still pretty loud. I get Marshall 800s. Is my standard request from the backline company. And I'll get a good, pretty chunky tone. And if it's a little too loud for Gordon, who's usually the amp's right by my drummer, he'll say, well, maybe point that away or turn it down a little bit. So, but we have a great front of house guy. So I know that no matter what's coming out of my amp, he's going to make it sound good out front.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have that, which is, thank God.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But,
you gotta,
we have a very quiet stage, no wedges. It's it's kind of empty. There's nothing to trip over. It's really nice. I had to get used to them at first, but it's.
Yeah. How long did it? Because guitar play, right? We wind up talking about in-ears a lot for a variety of reasons. Many bands are moving to them. I've been on them for 20 years, but as a singing drummer, I couldn't get to them fast enough. It was so much better than a wedge.
Yeah.
A wedge for me has to get vocals louder than a snare drum, right? And so this is a bad, and I wore earplugs from day one, but it still was there was volume wars just at the drum set. This is a bad place to start.
Right.
So moving to ears was a pain in the ass 20 years ago to do it. As a weekend warrior, but I made it happen. But we have a lot of people who move to them for many of the same reasons. And guitar players in general seem to have the hardest time going from hearing their amp, 15 feet away to hearing it right in their ears.
Well, I would say,
how did you do that? Yeah.
Don't expect a great sound. like because guitar just doesn't sound that great in ears. I mean, it just doesn't. You know, I can have a guitar that sounds great coming out of the amp. I'll put in my ears and it's like, I don't know about that. That sounds a little weird, but I trust my guys and I know what's coming out of the amp and I know what the front of house guy is doing. So as long as I can hear it, if I get a good tone in my ears, I consider myself fortunate. You know, I can hear the guitar. It's okay, but sometimes it sort of has that direct sound, you know, or just it's just not translating. I don't know.
So I might have a tip for you. I had Brian Cross, aka Froggy, who is a front of house engineer. He wound up doing like Christina and Gwen Stefani, but he's also a tour manager or production manager, sorry. And for a number of years, his gig has been production managing the Doobie Brothers.
Okay.
But he is an audio engineer at heart, right? And he said all of the guitar players, and there are many of them, in the Doobie Brothers, when they started this last tour, were complaining about the same kind of thing you were just saying. Yeah. My guitar doesn't sound like my guitar in my ears. This sucks. And he moved them all, and this is the ironic part, to the Earthworks Ethos microphone in front of their guitar. Now, the Earthworks Ethos is built as a broadcast mic, and believe it or not, it is the one you see me talking into right now, just by happenstance. He's like, that mic solved all of my guitar players' problems. And his whole, the concept behind it was, you need a mic that's going to let the amp sound like the amp and not color it in any way.
Right.
And Earthworks in general kind of builds their mics that way. And this one certainly, you know, has that quality to it. So maybe that's part of your answer. And you don't thank me for it. Thank Brian. Thank Froggy. He's the one that figured it out. But yeah. And you know, I have taken that lesson to heart. I wound up putting the new SR20 Gen 2s or whatever they are from Earthworks as my overheads just in the rehearsal room for my band with my drums. And I had the same thing. Like, I could always hear my cymbals, but it was a reference to the fact that acknowledged that I hit them. It didn't sound like my drums.
Right.
And when I moved to that Earthworks mic, it was like, oh, wait a minute. This sounds just like my drums, except I get to control the volume of it.
That's incredible.
Right here.
Oh, good.
So maybe that's the answer. Brian said it solved it for 3 guitar players in a moment.
That's amazing. Well,
and it makes sense, you know. Yeah. So anyway, you know, I'm sure Earthworks will love me for this little segment, but they didn't pay for this segment, mind you, but you know. So, wow, interesting. But are you on ears with your own band too, or just
no?
with
I'm just in earplugs, and I don't like it. It takes me out of the performance a little bit. But we're loud. You know, we're usually on smaller stages, and my drummer's loud, and we're loud. My guitars are loud. I'm thinking I'd like to move to in-ears on my own show too, because they just work.
And it makes. I mean, when you get the volume right, and as you pointed out, you can certainly have the volume too loud in your ears. They aren't magic hearing protection, but they can be hearing protection. And also you get to hear all the harmonies too. Yeah,
just as long as I can hear something in there as a reference, that's all I need. I'm not trying to hear something that sounds, I mean, if it does sound amazing, great.
It can.
It doesn't have to.
I often am able to get amazing in-ear mixes, especially if I can get a stereo mix. I assume in the orchestra you're able to do stereo panning and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It makes sometimes those small clubs.
I mean,
it's tough,
you know,
it's tough enough.
It doesn't sound terrible. It's really just the guitar. The vocals and keyboards and everything else is fine. It's just getting a good guitar tone in my ears has been hard.
You're not alone. Yeah. It's a lot of people that this is a common thing. Yeah. You said you do a lot of teaching, or some lecturing, I suppose, is what you said. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Anything that we haven't discussed or that we have that you would dig into more, advice that you would give to folks like in this crazy industry doing their thing?
Well, say yes was one of them, and don't be a dick, and be at the table.
Yeah.
Don't quit. be super talented.
Yeah.
Basically, when I lecture at this recording school called Omega up in Rockville, north of here in Maryland, and I say, okay, this lecture is called "How to Make a Living in the Music Business." Can't be done. Any questions? Yeah. And everybody sort of,
Yeah.
and then we talk about. Then I go through and it's usually 20 or 30 kids, not kids, people in their 20s. And I say, what was the first experience in your life that turned you on to music? What made your head explode? And everybody says, well, my mom used to play all this R&B when I was a kid, or I started in church, or I did this, or I heard Depeche Mode for the first time, or whatever it was. And I get everybody in the class kind of thinking about why they're there and what it is that we love. And I say, okay, so we all love music. We don't want to work a straight job. We'd love to work in the music business if possible, and do it for a long time and be successful and quit that other job, right? And they all go, yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, we're all on the same page. And then I'll tell stories of what I did right and wrong. And there's the thing about the music business is you've got to make it all up. It's happenstance and your own creativity. There's no rules. There's no Department of Music downtown DC. There's no, there's nobody waiting to help you.
Yeah.
But if you're an enthusiastic, talented, fun person, then there are people who want to help you.
There are people willing, just not waiting. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Who will like, oh, you've got what it takes. And it's just, and the fact that it is such a free for all, you've got to be able to put up with that, slow months, slow days, slow weeks, slow years versus, really exciting times where you're too busy to do anything. And then I try to explain that, there's a million jobs around just the one you're picturing. There's like when we play these cruises, these rock cruises, like On the Blue with the Moody Blues or Rock and Romance, there's a crew of like 30 or 40 guys working the 8 or 9 rooms on the boat. If you're a live engineer, there's a lot more places than just rock clubs to do this, and if you're a good monitor engineer or a good mixing engineer or a good mastering engineer, you can work forever because those are really specific, difficult to do well jobs. So it's like, there's a lot of work out there, and it's not always going to reward your particular songwriting. Like your songs might be last in line in terms of what will possibly make it. Like my production music, my instrumental music earns me more money than my precious, songs that I labored over so hard.
But that's okay.
Yeah, like but that's okay. Whatever works. And I teach guitar here. I was, when I moved to Maryland from LA, I was standing at a bus stop with my then 4-year-old daughter or whatever. And somebody said, hey, are you the guitar player? And I said, yeah. And they go, do you teach guitar? And I said, yes, I do. And, I called up Eric Troyer in the band and said, how do you teach guitar? And he says, start them off with a Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and go from there. And after about a year, I had about 20 students a week.
Wow.
And adults. There's a lot of lawyers and scientists and brainy people here who put the guitar down after college and 30 years later want to pick it up. So, I'm playing AC/DC with them. And then these 8-year-olds who are gamers come in and say, well, I like AC/DC and Deep Purple. It's like, did we all go to the same high school at the same time or what? It's like, so, and then I'll have like the indie kids who will bring me songs by, a band I've never heard of with 80 million plays, or a band I've never heard of with 12 plays that they found. That's really cool.
Sure.
And I'll have to figure it out. So I've got a guitar in my hand 4, 5, 6 days a week. And I think I'm a way better guitarist now than I used to be.
That's probably true. I mean, there is no substitute for practice time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And my goal is I'm not going to teach you the shitty version of the song. We're going to learn. We're going to learn what Jimmy Page is doing here, and
we're not going to learn how the guy played Mustang Sally in the sweaty bar on Saturday night. We're going to learn the way it was done. That's right.
It's like, when I found out that Jimmy Page was doing this. So if that riff, the second note you hear, that is a bent D note rubbing against an unbent, an open D string.
What?
Listen to this.
That's how he gets that sound.
Yeah. It's like, and I had to listen to that about 50 times, and I said, oh shit, I think he's doing this. Isn't that awesome?
It's a chord, but it's not like,
it passes by so fast you don't even know what's going on, and it's leading you to the E note too. And it gives it that messed up, like, oh my god,
it's sharp,
and it's kind of it's nasty,
Yeah.
So I love that stuff. I never would have picked that up, because why would I bother trying to learn a whole lot of love for my own?
Sure.
I mean,
I
think I know it, but
no, that's the way most people play it. What you just did there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not far off.
No, but it's not the same. It's like, wow. Interesting.
I just found out that, what was it? It's in Day Tripper.
Okay.
Can we do this?
You can do anything you want.
George is stuck with playing that riff without the open strings, so. And then John goes, like when they go, he does this little climb on guitar that I've never heard.
Really?
Have you ever heard that?
No.
That part?
I've played that.
It's like, oh, wow.
Of course that's there.
But I'd never heard it before. And, we hear these songs for 50 years. And then when you really listen, and of course it makes your ear better the more you do this.
Right.
It's like
way better. Yeah.
It's like my students, it's one of my magic tricks. My students go, how did you hear that? And I said, years of listening.
Yeah. Right.
So
wow.
I love that aspect of teaching. So it's taught me easily as much as I've taught any of my guys, so. And
that's, yeah. Right. Any of your students. Well, I mean, this has been amazing. I want to make sure we don't gloss over the fact that, here you are, someone who's had hit records, except on Billboard, and the freedom that comes with it. You've been, I mean, whether you consider yourself a rock star or someone who plays the role of a rock star, it doesn't really matter. I would consider you you play on these stages in front of thousands of people, and you made a decision a long time ago to be a career musician, and that meant saying yes to everything. And even at that point in your career, saying yes to, of course, I'll teach your kid how to play guitar, because that allows me to continue being a working musician and keeping all of those cash flow streams open so that you can continue being a working musician. You're not, maybe, the temptation said, ain't too proud to beg, ain't too proud to teach, ain't too proud to do anything, right? Like,
well, it's like when I tell people I have 7 1099s basically. Like I lecture, teach, the orchestra, my own band, random gigs. It's all 1099 stuff. It's it's all gig work. And then BMI royalties. And so they all just kind of dump money throughout the year, not exactly always on time, but enough.
Obviously. Right.
And I'm married, and my wife has a great job. So, it's not everything is dependent on me, which is great. But I've had my best years, like the last 5-10 years have been my best years ever. And also on the East Coast, when you play live, you get paid, versus in LA, when you play live, you're 10th in line and, just happy to get the gig. And
is that right?
Oh yeah. It's terrible playing live in LA. I mean, there's tours that go through, but if you're playing locally, if you're like, oh, there's the bass player from, Ray LaMontagne, which is true, my old bass player, Jennifer, and the drummer who's played with, Michael Jackson.
Countless people, sure.
You get all these LA stars, like not stars, but,
Stars in our world. In our world, there's stars.
Playing Mustang
Absolutely.
Sally in a bar on a Thursday, and they're not going to make any money, but it's a way to play. And but on the East Coast, you actually get paid, which was a nice thing to discover. So, and when I tell people what I pay my band back out west, like when they go, what you pay your drummer is what we all split, So,
no, I've playing on the East Coast. I like making money. Certainly, I've played shitty gigs where you don't make anything, but they're it's not the norm, right? Like there's money to be made.
You're going to get paid, and so that's been a nice thing. And what were we saying?
Take every gig, say yes. Like, I mean, that's basically
One thing we haven't talked. I've got a bunch of records, and if we can mention ParthenonHuxley.com, you can go there and find them.
Absolutely.
In the store as a download or a CD. And I also want to mention that I have finished my memoir, which is like whenever I travel early on with the orchestra, and if I was in a weird town in Chile, I'd write extensive notes about it, and just because I know I'm probably not going back there.
Sure.
And so after about I don't know, I had about 80 pages of stuff, and I said this could be kind of a book, and so I started writing it, and then in our friend Dan, This Is Your Brain on Music. Dan was in DC, and I slipped him. I sort of nervously slipped him page 1 of what I thought was the opening page to this book, and he goes, "Well, every book needs a hook, and this is a great hook. You should totally write this." And I said, "Sold." So then COVID happened, and I had roughly 2 years at home or a year and a half at home, and I said, if I don't finish this book during COVID, I'll have no excuse. So I started working on it pretty much every day, and now I turned it in, I think almost a year ago, and we're almost finished with it now because the editing and indexing and all this stuff takes forever. But it'll be out relatively soon. I'm really excited about it. I think it's a fun read, and it's everything we're talking about, right? It's decisions, good decisions, bad decisions, luck, misfortune, personal stuff. It's a nice read.
I'm looking forward to it. And plan to have you back on and talk about the book when it's out too.
That'd be good.
That'd be fun.
Great.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. When I mean, you thinking like near the first of the year, somewhere
Probably.
in the first quarter?
We're still figuring that out.
Got it. Okay.
So,
all right. Well, yeah. Keep me posted.
It's whenever I'm probably most free to do the promo stuff, which I'm looking forward to doing.
Yeah. Fun stuff. That's amazing. Hux, thank you. This has been like, dude. We could just keep doing this for another hour, I think. So we will. We'll have you back. I mean, there's no rules here.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you having me on. Really
absolutely,
do.
Absolutely, man. Every episode, I never know coming in where it's going to go, especially with somebody where like you. I mean, basically, people just got to hear the first hour of our ever meeting. So they missed they missed the stupid email trail, but. Folks, you didn't miss anything, So it's always really interesting, and I'm so glad you brought your guitar. Very few people have done that, which is I know I would expect more of that, but
there's a bunch of them in the room, so
yeah, why not? Well, and it like we got to do some fun things, so thank you. This has been a super blast. We have a phrase that we say to our listeners. And I would love if you would share this advice with people in whatever form you might like as we say goodbye here. So I'll leave it to you for this, Hux.
Always be performing.
Amazing.
Always be performing. What else is there to do? Always be performing, and it's good for you.
Well, That's about perfect. Thank you, Hux. Thanks for taking the time with us. And
Thanks, Dave. I hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, same. Folks, always be performing. We'll see you next week.
All right, man. Cheers.
And we're out. That's it. That was perfect. I usually have music I play in the outro, and instead you played music in the outro. So there you go. Yeah, man.